Hispanic, Latino, Asian, everybody was getting high here in America. If you was America, I don't care what color you was. They was all doing it. And if they wasn't doing it, they were distracted and jaded and everything else in between. Crazy and didn't know what was going to happen. All kind of stuff. Not to mention racism. We can incorporate that as failure too for Generation X. Yeah. Baby boomers was full of racism too. Failing the white part of Generation X because they teach Generation X to be racist too. Or they didn't teach them to unify as they should have. They may have not told you to go out there and be racist, but they didn't tell you to unify and get this country going in the right direction, now did they? So see, there's many parts I got to cover for why baby boomers failed Generation X and why the revolution never happened. It was supposed to been happen. This was supposed to happen 20 years ago. Okay, you don't act like you know that, do you? We were supposed to have the revolution at the top of the millennium. Now you see where I'm going with this. 20 years ago, that's about 2002. We were supposed to have a revolution around 2002. That's a 7. Well, if many of Generation X people was in their 20s and 30s around that time, that's when the revolution was supposed to start. But you know what happened during that time too? You had in 2001, right around the time that was supposed to be for the revolution, you had one of the greatest acts of terrorism here in this country, 9/11. See, I'm trying to show you how all of this, that's why it's very complex, and I'm gonna get to it all. Because see, there were generations that were helpful, and there were generations that were evil. Baby boomers are that generation is responsible for a lot of evil that also went on in this country too. Because it's probably safe to say that the baby boomers are responsible for a lot of stuff that happened around the time of 9/11 when that stuff happened. Now, whether you believe America was a part of that or not, okay, baby boomers were in full effect during that time. Safe to say, right? Let's just put it like this. They were in full effect. But the revolution was supposed to start around 2002, 2001, 2000, year 2000. And then you had 9/11 that threw everybody off and no one was thinking about the revolution. That's a 7. Now you see where it went wrong. Where it was supposed to happen, that satanic act distracted everybody. Before you had COVID, you had 9/11. That distracted everybody. And nobody was thinking about the revolution, and nobody even cared about it. We just sat there and we just went through the top of the millennium like space cadets. You don't remember that? You can't even really say what happened from 2000 to about 2010, can you? That first decade, can you really say what happened? Can you really say what was going on? See, that was supposed to be the time of the revolution and we missed it. I'm trying to show you. It was all set up to happen that way. Doesn't it make sense? Top of a century, revolution, hello, that's a 7. Well, wouldn't it be nice to have a revolution at the top of the millennium? I'm right on point with this, man. It was supposed to happen starting around the early millennium. And this is what you need to understand. So I'm going to keep covering this over and over. I'm going to keep making you aware of this. I'm gonna keep covering it over and over again. Now, for you that don't know, December 1898 is when cocaine made its debut in America. 1898 is when cocaine made its debut in America. December 1898. Now, let's cover some of the names of the baby boomer generation. And I'm not picking on anybody. Donald Trump, he comes from the baby boomer generation. He failed us recently. He's the most recent baby boomer that failed us. That's a 7. I know you don't like it, do you? I'm keeping it 100. He's from the baby boomer generation. He saw all of that, Barack Obama, I'm not saying he failed us, but he's from the baby boomer generation. Al Sharpton is from the baby boomer generation. Richard Nixon came from the greatest generation. Now, the greatest generation was from 1901 to 1927. Reagan and Nixon. Richard Nixon and Ronald Reagan. They both came from the greatest generation. 1901, 1927. Now, some people would say they were corrupt, at least Richard Nixon. Edgar Hoover, who badgered and played with MLK. He came from the lost generation, which was the oldest generation, the first generation from 1883 to 1900. Edgar Hoover, which was the head of the FBI, who just followed MLK all around the country. Oh, yeah, go do your history on Edgar Hoover. See, I'm trying to show you the generations that countered progress, those who were resourceful, and those who were jerks, and those who were idiots. Edgar Hoover is one of those idiots, okay? He comes from the lost generation. Yeah, he was lost, all right. And look up the lost generation. Look up their culture. Starts from there. They were born in 1883 to the year 1900. Yeah, he comes from the lost generation. At that time, when Edgar Hoover was from the lost generation, was at the top of the FBI, he illegally protected Richard Nixon from investigation. The FBI illegally protected Richard Nixon from investigation. Okay? So I want you to see, and I'm going to go more in depth about this, but I'm giving you basically the crust of where this is going. You can see that the baby boomers are the ones that failed Generation X. Those are the two generations that were supposed to be the recipient of the revolution, which came from the silent generation, which the silent generation started from 1928 to 1945, which had Malcolm X and Martin Luther King Jr. in it. And and the baby boomers was my parents, our parents, the Generation X parents, which were the baby boomers, and they were supposed to receive all that energy and vibration and give it to us, and we were supposed to start the revolution, but they were too busy getting high. They were arrogant, also cocky, and they were in sex, rock and roll, and drugs, and this is why we did not have the revolution. So this is to be continued. I'm gonna come back on this.